Hey guys, Jared and I went through uh and we went through and kind of used, if you go ahead and refer to, or before I start, let me share my screen real quick. Jared had pointed out to bullet points for that are like outlined in the semifinal in the design challenge uh that or like in the guidelines that um sort of are mentioned in terms of the semifinal presentations to be turned in. Um, from if you guys can see this right here, I can try to. Can people read this?
So if
Yeah,
you
I can read
have
it.
the slides pulled up, feel free to go to slide 2. For your reference, I also put the link to the challenge rules in the chat. This is referring to section 5.3 if you're looking at that, but you can also look up the presentation like what Sterling is showing.
Yeah. So Jared had kind of pointed out to me that um aside from what the presentations that were being shown in that video that the solar decathlon kind of like sent out with their semifinal, like, I don't know, one of their announcements that says like, oh, this is how you should like the deadline's coming up to submit, blah 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 blah, all those details. And then it was like, oh, for an idea of the presentation format, go refer to this video. um Aside from that, they have these goals here that or like the kind of the stuff that we're being graded on. And I'll go ahead and read them out just in case people aren't seeing it yet. But so the first one is effectiveness of project summary and conveying the salient points of the project. So I know we've been working a lot on this presentation itself, but hopefully with what data and everything that we gather here, like it should be pretty easy to just like bang out a paragraph or two each, kind of talking about different aspects of like the just the building and the project summary. Um, the next one is discussion of design goals. So Jared and I were kind of talking about, if you refer to in the slides, we added kind of like a table of contents where we will be able to like address the stuff that we talked about in last meeting, as well as the stuff that's kind of been added on with what is seen here going on. So yeah, so we're gonna have to like talk about what we want as design goals, both like holistically and technically speaking. One thing that we're lacking is the discussion of the target market, building occupant characteristics, and resulting impacts on the design constraints. I've got a couple ideas on that I could talk about a little bit later. We need to talk about the discussion, but we need to talk about the local climate and the impact of related building science consideration on design strategies. Um, I think that this is just going to be talking about like we have a couple of things about the local climate in LA is like, we obviously have a a high percentage of like sunny days and like and solar irradiance, as well as relatively consistent um, climate and temperature, which gives us sort of breathing room and not having to design for like huge extremes, and being able to rely on like the effectiveness of our systems at like their optimal performance without having to worry about those constraints is something that we can probably touch on there. Discussion of building code constraints and standards, that's something that we haven't really touched on in this presentation. um, and then there's the quality of the team's plan for submitting the final design submission deliverables. um, we were saying that like we should probably frame some of our like energy I'm sorry, some of our like engineering aspects and some of like these some of the things that we've been talking about maybe is more like high level and like future goal oriented than we may have been like kind of leading on in the meeting earlier today. Like that might have been partly like my fault. I didn't mean to cause like any like sort of like discourse or anything, but like just seeing what the winners of these like competitions had put on, it seemed like that we were just like missing a lot of the data. But based on like what they're saying in this semifinal competition, like I think that it's implied that our design is not final yet, so we can kind of take advantage of that and maybe include a little bit more like estimations and or places that we want to be, rather than like saying, oh, this is exactly where we're at. Gavin, obviously that kind of like ties in with what we were talking about, how like this climate studio thermal energy modeling is not being very nice to us. So that keeping that in mind, like we should be able to like make it more future or goal sort of like framed in some of our slides and some of our terminology. And then it says compliance with the rules, including division definitions and submission formatting, which is, I think that we kind of got on lock. And then other factors such as geographic locations and technology choices that help optimize competition, diversity, and fairness. If you look, those are like all the requirements that we're being judged on those criteria. None of it really explicitly mentions like calculations, outputs, and a lot of data. A lot of the stuff that we saw in a lot of the stuff that you see in like this, if you refer to this video, like a lot of those winning presentations like had a lot of data and metrics that we just don't have yet, kind of like what we were talking about. So if we, as we like kind of go through this and think to ourselves like, okay, maybe we don't have some of this data, but we know where we want to go with it, and still talking about the concepts or the systems that are being implemented in depth without necessarily like saying, oh, this is the number that we have. Like maybe we can make it more like this is the number that we want to go to. Just as like an example. Jared, if there's anything like for the list of stuff that you included there, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of touch on here?
Not in particular. What you're seeing on this slide, just so that everyone is clear, it's basically like what Sterling was mentioning, just like the bullet points that talk about what we're going to be evaluated or judged on for like our semifinal deliverables. So all that's kind of like listed here. Some of the stuff, we can kind of see where in our presentation it'll be included. Like Sterling mentioned, talking about our design goals is one of those things that we're going to be judged on. We made like a slide for like design goals to kind of like in broad strokes kind of talk about how aspects of our building design kind of cater to like whatever needs we're trying to serve, like in regards to like our target audience in that LA area. Some of this stuff was probably mentioned in the project summary as well. But so we have design goals on that front. But given that, looking at these presentations and looking at the bullet points, the video that they showed us, I'm pretty sure, and Sterling can correct me if I'm wrong on this, those definitely were like, they didn't go into, like you said, too much of the granular data into each like kind of subsystem. They did provide like numbers, like detailing like energy performance, or maybe, some numbers on like, hey, like, the type of R value and like the type of insulation that we're using. But they also incorporated like kind of high level like design goals that they were trying to go for. So I think that, making sure that our presentation touches on these bullet points, tries to like, talk about them, we don't have to explicitly, put them in a slide, but, obviously these slides are due tomorrow. So if we have slides that kind of, allow us to kind of elaborate and talk live in addressing these bullet points, that can also work as well. So yeah, that's pretty much what I have to add. And the compliance with rules, I put a little screenshot of what the attached housing requirements are listed. Obviously 4 and 5 are still kind of like to be determined. We don't have that. I assume that 1, 2, and 3 are, are good in terms of like the amount of dwelling units. We're 3 stories, the building size per dwelling unit. I assume those are fine, but 4 and 5 are kind of still up in the air. But I guess it's now just time for us to try and, implement as much of these bullet points as we can. And, the videos that, that Sterling shared, that were shared with us from Solar Decathlon, they kind of give us an idea of like the formatting. So that's kind of like how we try to go about kind of setting up the slides. So if you see like in slide 2, there's kind of like a table of contents. We can, not slide 2, slide 3. This is definitely like, if you guys feel that there are better ways to kind of like articulate or kind of organize, feel free to mention it and let us know. But yeah, there are some things that need to kind of be elaborated on, whether it's in the presentation slides themselves, or if we can kind of like, make speaker notes so that when we present, Friday, Saturday, we can kind of like insert those in, so stuff about like the target audience, maybe about how like our building constraints, how they're related to some of the climate concerns and things like that. I think getting a clear idea on that could, help us out with this.
Are there any questions about the stuff that we just talked about?
I mean, it definitely makes sense. I'm happy to kind of stay vague and not go into too much detail since we don't have a ton of those details.
Yeah.
Is this going to be the rough presentation, this thing itself? So we're going to be putting our stuff here.
Yeah, well, this is the presentation. Like, this is kind of the outline that we had like started with. Yeah, but like this slide obviously like won't be included, slide 2, and then slide 3. If we want to make the table of contents like a little more aesthetic, we the sub bullets, the smaller bullets, were kind of like stuff that we had written out that for each sub team to kind of like take a look at and think where they're supposed to like add stuff.
And we didn't come up with these like from our own heads, right? Some of this stuff was already included in like the presentation slides outline. And we may have like added maybe a bullet point or so that we felt would be helpful. So
yeah,
for
this
example,
looks great.
Yeah, like having the site details, we noticed that in the videos, most of the groups that presented talked about the site location and something about the climate. And they used like quite a bit of diagrams and pictures. And they were able to, from Sterling, that didn't mean that they kind of like just went, talked high level the whole time, right? They were able to use the presentation slides effectively to where they had like a lot of diagrams and some numbers, but they were able to talk like intelligently about it, right? So like, for example, in that table of contents slide, the site location, we saw that, most groups talked about that, right? We don't have, from like diagrams that we can include, since we do have like 2D and 3D, diagrams, models of our building design, that could be incorporated, say, in like the architecture section, or maybe site details that kind of, talk about, the, not only modular design, but like all the stuff, that, y'all have been working on. And, you know, we added kind of maybe a few extra bullet points, but, you know, we just thought that, you know, that's how we kind of organized the outline and the table of contents in that way. But I will mention that so kind of to give like a brief update on the her score. I looked up a YouTube video on kind of like the tutorial that uses rem rate. And I talked with Sterling about this, and it seems like in order for us to get a HERS index, like a certified home energy rating, we need to work in the detailed inputs, you know, section of rem rate, the software that we're using. So before, like in the previous meeting, we tried working with simplified inputs, but we were able to get like load calculations, right? Like design loads, annual loads, consumption, and like, you know, mega BTUs per year, or, you know, kilo BTUs per year, that type of thing. But in order for us to get like an actual HERS score, we would need to do detailed inputs, which means that we, you know, we'll need to kind of like get into more of the details of this thing, right? It would be ideal if we can get a HERS score in time for our presentation, because there is a requirement for attached housing that its HERS score needs to be under a certain amount. Whether or not we can get that done, I guess that's something that we're just gonna have to kind of discuss and kind of be more realistic at this point. You know, in the event that we weren't able to, it would really kind of be up to the judges kind of evaluating us and seeing, you know, we are missing some of the minimum requirements, but can we still crack, you know, the top 10 would be the question, you know, that type of
Right.
thing. If you,
Jared, I wanted to mention, you know, kind of with this like whole like future goal, we're gonna continue to like work on our like design and stuff. Like I think that it wouldn't be harmful to say like, you know, with a simplified inputs, like we are currently like projecting our HERS score of like 20. This is like without, you know, our systems like working in conjunction with each other, or like we say 30 or something like that, where like we start with a number that like we can kind of just like work off of, because like I'm very, very confident that like with the measures that we take, naturally like some of these buildings in this like presentation stuff, like they had HERS scores of like -22. Like, so like if we start and say like, oh, we're at like like we're estimating a HERS score without like our systems like kind of working in with each other, like maybe the ground source heat pump and are working with the water system, or, you know, really figuring out how our daylighting is supposed to integrate with all of our like our actual lighting fixtures, and like a lot of these systems that might be more like intertwined that actually make us more efficient. I think that maybe we can just like give an estimate, because like better to try and get done as much of this like presentation while we're here, and maybe take more time with like the detailed inputs, than like trying to take that time now, is kind of like what I'm thinking, just because we do have to get this done by tomorrow. What do you think of that?
and everyone else, you can feel free to chime in on this as well, because the detailed inputs would be required for us to get an actual HERS score, you know,
Mhm.
which is like a requirement. But kind of like, you know, talking with about like Max's point and kind of Sterling's point as well, you know, the way I'm thinking about it is that, you know, on slide 2, it has like all of kind of like those bullet points for like what we're going to be judged on. And I don't know if, you know, Sterling, if you can pull up the design challenge rules
Yeah.
real quick.
The ones like on slide 2, or do you want the actual like?
The like actual, or
Yeah, I got
actually,
them right here.
you got them? Okay, great.
Yeah, I got them pulled up
Can you
right
go to show your screen and go to section 5?
here. Yeah.
Yeah, just scroll a little bit up. Yeah, so like the evaluation scale, like this is kind of like what we're dealing with. So, and feel free to interject, and all y'all who are still here, if you have ideas on what we should prioritize right now for the presentation slides that we need to submit tomorrow and the project summary, feel free to interject and tell us like what do you think would be a best use of our time right now? Because my view is that if we can get we should try and get most of the bullet points kind of that are talked about that we're going to be judged on. So if we don't have like an actual HERS score, I feel like if we kind of focus on attacking the bullet points that we can answer, I feel like that not having a HERS score, like if we concentrate on like the other bullet points that we can do, right, I think that'll be a good way of kind of like that we can go forward with like our actual presentation. And that would just be kind of like a goal in the back of our minds, like, okay, we're going to be working on the detailed inputs to get like an actual HERS score. But at this point, I think it's best if we kind of like channel our efforts into like forming these slides and trying to get as much of the bullet points as possible. And we might not, I don't know how we would try and estimate a HERS score, but we do have like load calculations and stuff like that. And we're not going to be able to like ask the jurors questions, or I don't think they're going to ask us questions. So if we don't have like an actual HERS score, they're probably going to make a note of that, whether we call it an estimate or not. So I just think focusing on those other bullet points on our slides, I think that's doing just the best that we can do. If we don't have a HERS score, that's just something in the future that we will work on, so.
Seems like a good strategy.
Yeah, and Gavin, I wanted to ask you how the progress came with like doing the thermal. You said you were going to look at the other.
Yeah, I can.
Here, I can stop sharing my screen.
Let's see which screen am on this one. Basically, you kind of have to remake the floor plans in the Cove tool software, but I'm almost done with it, so hopefully I can get an output and send it to you. But this is the third floor, so I've got the first, the second, and
wow, that's insane.
The third floor, and
you're crazy.
We have like a lot of good material like with these like detailed plans and everything, so that's like one thing that I think really I applaud y'all for like putting in the work to get us to this point that we're at right now with this. We're still trying to get the software and everything situated, but like the level of detail and like us going through the revisions and y'all meeting with Professor Todd Lynch and meeting with Amy, that's just been great on y'all's part. So yeah,
I'll send over what I can get out of it, and I can also just send over the login too, so you can go in and check it out.
Okay, sweet. And so what I'm planning on doing right now is like a really long time ago I had done like I found some heating and cooling estimation like calculator based on like square footage and like the climate zone that we were in, like, and like, sorry, the area code of like our site, and got a number that was like for heating or cooling it would be like 1800 BTUs per hour. So I might just use that for now to like size almost the ground source heat pump and say like, okay, so that means we're going to need like a 4-ton unit. What I'm also proposing is so that we can like extend our ground source heat pump system to all 12 of these units. The issue with the manufacturer that I found, like the only one unit can only work towards like 6 different zones, and we have like 12 different zones technically. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna propose that we like have 2 units working in parallel, which like saying it now, like that just is gonna cost more money, which like maybe doesn't, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the best way to size and then also like control each of these rooms individually. But I'll work on that and include that in the slides. The other thing that I think, like the thing that I think we should talk about together now is like in this goals slide, we need to think about sharing screen. In this goal slide here, we need to think about like sort of holistic goals that we have for like the inspiration of this building, as well as technical goals that we're trying to achieve with like the systems that we've like designed. So some of the natural ones are like, you know, optimizing efficiency with like the envelope, or like integrating integrating technical systems together to reduce heat waste or waste in general. But more holistically, we need to think about like what is the inspiration for us creating a multifamily modular house, and like that's more of a question for like you guys. Like why do you think that it's important for like in this future mind of like thinking about, you know, we're in LA, we're facing a huge housing crisis naturally with like just the natural rise in like the prices for and like renting prices in new properties and new construction. Like, you know, in my mind, a multifamily residence like greatly reduces like the, I guess like the amount of space that you know, like a family gets as opposed to like a single residence. But like we're basically trying to optimize the performance of this building so that like multiple different families are able to live on like a single property. And like we need to like come up with the goals that are kind of like driving that, that's based on our target audience, right? Because in my mind, our target audience is like, you know, we're trying to come up with affordable housing amidst a housing crisis. So what would be a good solution for that is like allocating one property to multiple different units for people to enjoy.
Yeah, I can definitely write. I didn't definitely fill in a bunch of stuff here about how, like, you know, we need to live more densely to live more environmentally. How density is also affordability. How a modular approach means, you know, quicker timelines. It means, you know, maybe more high quality prefabricated units. You know, we take an approach where we use prefab units, but we still create a lot of variety. So we're still kind of
awesome,
enhancing the urban contact. There's plenty of stuff to say. We can fill that in.
Awesome. And maybe this goals slide could be like oriented so it's like rather than having like one text box that's like listing out a bunch of goals, like maybe we have some smaller like sort of text boxes that are like each just like have their own little word like blurb like about the goal, and we have like a bunch of them and be like, you know, maybe we, or no, maybe not a bunch, maybe we have like six of these size boxes that we can, you guys can still see my screen, right? Am I sharing my screen? Cool. So like maybe doing like 6 of these, for example. And we just say like, okay, like let's put 6 goals that like we are thinking about, like 3 sort of like holistic, what's the like 3 maybe like more holistic, 3 maybe more technical, or some ratio. I don't know exactly, but that kind of what Jared and I were like thinking is like these goals need to be the foundation of like the way that we've designed the building, as well as the way that we've engineered the building, if that makes sense. Like we need to use these goals as inspiration for the way that we designed. We can't just be like, oh, like for me, you know, I've kind of been like, oh, you know, a ground source heat pump is just known to be the most efficient or known to be an efficient system, like maybe we design it, but like there needs to, I feel like there for each of like our different like design techniques, like we need to have like a good goal behind it, or at least part of a goal. I'll shut up. I think I've talked a lot, but yeah, it's kind of the stuff that we've been thinking about since last meeting.
No, that,
Yeah.
that totally makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll just add real quick to that. You know, we can like what Gavin mentioned that you have like ideas of what can be included in that kind of design goals section, which is great in terms of like our building and its relevance to the LA area and what it's striving to achieve for, you know, the target audience, for the people living there, etc. Things like that. What Sterling mentioned, for example, like, hey, why did we go with a geothermal ground source heat pump, right? There are air-to-air heat pumps and stuff like that. There are, you know, ways you could, you know, heat a space. You could have used like fossil fuels and stuff like that. Those points as to like why we went about doing specific building design, you know, ways why we chose to do this, that can be elaborated on when we do like the live presentation as well. You know, so if you're on your slide, for instance, about the building envelope, right? If you wanted to add in like what aspects of it, you know, cater or kind of like address the climate that we live in or something like that. I'm just kind of spitballing here, not necessarily saying you have to mention this, but these are some things where it's like we have our design goals slide, you know, but if there are additional things you wanted to elaborate on, when we do the actual presentation, we could, you know, briefly talk about that, you know, like if you're on your slide or something like that.
How about engineering team A? Is there anything you guys have discuss after the meeting?
It's a little hard to hear you from me. I'm not sure about the others.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot better.
Okay, yeah. Is there anything update from engineering A?
Yeah, I finished like an envelope kind of like schematic thing that I just put in the slides.
You want to
Other
talk
than
about it and share screen?
yeah, one second.
Oh, yeah, also, I mean, check out the chat room.
It's disabled. The sharing is disabled, but I did
again, I mean,
that, and then I think based off of what we just discussed now, we're gonna meet later again tonight when Kaiji's here. But I think what we're gonna do is probably talk a little bit more about what kind of materials we're selecting and why we're selecting them, kind of like showing the intent of the design a little more, I guess. And I think that's about. I think we're also talking about the R values of the insulation, because I think that's probably one of the most important parts. And then I think that's about it for engineering A.
good stuff. All right.
One thing I wanted to mention that I think we should really look into is like an important aspect of like LEED credential or like getting LEED accreditation for a building or LEED certified. It's the right way to say it, but is looking when we look at the site, like rather than just saying you know, like, oh, here's the building for the site, we also need to mention like accessibility to public transit. We need to talk about you know, like where like your like consumer marketplace is found, like how close are we to spaces that are like some of those like aspects of our like, you know, like living, like our daily living. That's something that I had seen in one of the presentations that I realized is like really important. If we want to go into breakout rooms and someone wants to like spearhead that, where like, you know, you can just go on Google Maps and like click on like public transit and it should like show it. But yeah, that's something that we should mention on slide 6. I'll go ahead and note it.
Yeah, I think engineering A can pick that up because it doesn't seem like we have too much to do.
That'd be
Yeah.
awesome. So yeah, you can again like Google Maps and just like, you know, find the nearest like grocery store, the nearest public transportation, and then you know, there might be a couple of other like amenities worth noting. I like forget what it's like to not live in an apartment and just, you know, be, I don't know, like a college kid. There's much more to it.
It is
Yeah,
it's right
definitely.
downtown in Dengen, so or in Lemur Park. So it's kind of right next to a main street. There's plenty of stuff there. Also, they're building a new metro subway line into that area. So definitely note those.
Oh yeah, the metro would be a great thing to note there for sure. Cool. Thanks, TKO.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get that done tonight. We're gonna meet up again later.
So we just gotta finish everything by tomorrow night. Is that the deadline for the
Tomorrow
slides?
too.
Tomorrow at 2, right? Okay. So we should try and make that push tonight, I think.
Yeah. I'm down to Max. If you have breakout room set up, I'm down to split out for a bit and just work for like, I don't know, for however long, and then like come back. If that's cool with everyone else.
Yeah, sounds good.
How long do you want the breakout rooms to be?
I gotta go pretty soon, but I'll check in with engineering A real quick.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of I feel like we gotta definitely engineering B, we need to make some progress on the energy performance stuff, and the like some of the other engineering aspects. So we'll go ahead and just like sit there and work on it.
Maybe for us, maybe at least a half hour or something like that, at least.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
we'll just kind of play by ear. That's for us. So if y'all also want to stick around and go into breakout rooms as well, and work on this is time to do it.
All right. Good luck, guys.
To go.
I mean, yesterday afternoon there was nothing on the slides, so I'll definitely go with we've made progress.
Sure. Yeah. And I might, if I have extra time, obviously the presentation slides are a priority. The her score, I'm not really gonna worry about that. If we're probably not gonna have it, so
Yeah, I
probably not
honestly,
gonna mention it in our slides. The judges will find out even if we said like an estimated, because like obviously we don't want to like fabricate, you know.
yeah,
any
no,
data or
I
something
totally
like
agree
that.
with that.
But I think it's better to work on like the bullet points and not have that included versus trying to kind of like juggle them and kind of just be mediocre on both
So
sides.
maybe we don't even mention EUI either.
Well, if the EUI is not like accurate, then
I mean, it was 26 kBTUs per square foot, which like our benchmark, our goal to get below was 76. But again, there was like 60% of it was lighting, and then there was like no cooling and like a little bit of heating, which like, I don't know. If they're saying that in that specific area, we for some reason don't have any cooling requirements during the summer, like that'd be ideal. But I think in that part of LA, it definitely gets hot.
I mean, for the simplified inputs, the REM does give us like load and kind of annual energy costs, but we didn't really kind of like do the simplified all the way through. Um, or like kind of like make sure we got to every kind of nook and cranny of that. But you know, like I said, if we kind of like work on the presentation and like the other bullet points and make our presentation like, you know, address all those and make it high quality, I think that can put us in a situation where we can at least get, you know, top 10. You know, because I think even if you're not selected for the finalists, they want you to submit a final kind of thing that even if you aren't like selected as a finalist, you'll like, you can still get feedback on like your final design.
Mhm.
So yeah, but
Okay. So here's what I'm thinking. Okay, so we've got the 2 slides that we want to like sort of crank out. I'm gonna send you a link on Hydroloops in the chat. Boom. So these are residential Hydroloops. I don't know like our like requirements for like how much water we're gonna need. But I'm thinking we just like talk about the system like in slide 15. Maybe instead of making this engineering, what I'm thinking is we do like gray water treatment, and we're gonna make that a little smaller. And we kind of offset these columns a little bit, so it's a little more entertaining maybe. We put like gray water treatment, boom, and we'll have like maybe a photo. Are you looking at slide 15?
I'm pulling up the slides right now. I have so many tabs open. It's ridiculous.
I know, dude. I have so many.
I guess, I wanted to ask Max if he was able to get in contact with Andre and Alan about the project summary.
Oh yeah.
Just so that that doesn't kind of like sneak up on us.
Fall
or
by the
something.
wayside.
Right. Yeah. Max is in ARC team right now.
I'm sure he'll hop in with us at some point.
Yeah, we can ask him. Because we still also need a name. It's just a modular dot.
I put that yesterday.
Nice. But yeah, okay, so you said slide, what was it?
15.
15? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make this like a little bit more aesthetic. Where like maybe we put like on-site solar. And you know, so for each of these, let me share my screen real quick.
This energy performance slide, there's like an image of a, what is that? Is that one of the EPA?
Yeah,
Water
that's an
sources?
aerator. So that's like basically it can be attached onto any like sink faucet and like and aerates the water so that it's like it's a water flow rate is 1 gallon per minute, which is like almost as low as you can, which is like just about as low as you can go. So rather than focusing on the fixture, like this EPA, this like Niagara Conservation company does like water. Yeah, awesome. If you want to put it up there. So I'll do like, I'm gonna grab the rest of those photos and I'll put them. What I'm gonna do on slide 17 is like put each of those photos on like a circle and just put a little blurb underneath, like describing what it's doing, or like what it does with like a little rate. Like for all the Energy Star stuff, it's gonna be the like the their energy use per year. If you want to put a photo of the Hydroloop above the gray water treatment, like if you put it above the gray water treatment there, and then we can put like a couple of bullet points underneath it, just talking about the concept.
Yeah, I know for on-site solar, I can go into PV watts and get like a number, and
Right.
with like some slides and stuff like that, I can look up while you're working on slide 17, because you were the one who did like looked up the Energy Star and water sense. You can do that. I can do on-site solar and the ground source heat pump and get kind of like images for that.
Yeah.
Oliver, if he's up for it, he can look at the hydro loop in that gray water treatment. Because I know that I don't know how much experience, Oliver, you have in terms of like the water projects, but I know that Engineers Without Borders has quite a bit of those.
I mean, my water project experiences is more like a larger scale. Like when I was in undergrad, I did one of like storm water planning for a community, like a project like that. I don't think that kind of I don't think that kind of experience can apply to this solar castle and all of this stuff.
Okay, for sure. No worries. Um, so yeah, I will work on slide, what is it, 15? I'll start working on the solar and the ground source heat pump. I can also do the gray water treatment as well, if needed, but
Okay, hey guys, I got a question actually for. I mean, I think Max mentioned like did he wanna? I mean, every one of us. I mean, every one of us to present during the presentation.
He only offered, but it's not required. Like we can have as many people present as we want.
But I mean, like, because like I personally had a concern because I don't know like if you guys know this, but like my personal experience shows like it's something like if we're gonna like when two person, I mean change from like if you do the presentation first and then I do the presentation next, I mean there's like a transition, right? So most of the time the transition will be like 10 seconds or 12 seconds or 8 seconds. If we're gonna have everybody on board, like for the presentation, it will be like 8 person. So there will be seven transaction, transition. So it is gonna be like up to 1 minute and 10 seconds. So I mean, I'm just concerned about this because like we can't explain a lot of things during 1 minute.
I think taking like I think we can maybe propose like just having one like, and I totally hear you like Oliver, I feel that for sure. I think honestly like one person per sub team to just talk about some of the key points like will be fine. Like
or maybe like 2 person will be good enough. But I don't
yeah,
think we don't need to get everybody on board. I mean, like just 2 or 1 will be good enough from each sub team. What do you think?
for sure. Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
think that we can, I think that that's something that we could for sure bring up um with Max once we like circle back,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
if he joins our thing.
Okay, good. Thanks for understanding. Like, yeah, I see.
Yeah, of course,
understand
of
what you
course, dude. All right, let's try and find these photos. Here we go.
all right, we'll do. Do you want to just wait for Max to hopefully come in to our breakout room, or do you want me to kind of like go in and kind of ask about the project summary and kind of like how many people are presenting?
Um, let's just work on what we're doing now, and then just have him like when he comes and joins us, like we can ask him.
Okay, sounds good.
Jared, what do you think we should do about lighting?
In terms about, are you talking about kind of like just in broad terms, like what we're trying to achieve with it?
I mean,
Or-
like, we just have like no fixture selection or anything like that. Do you think it's something that we should just like not even, should we just leave it out for now? She's like not saying anything about it.
In terms of at least for now, probably. I'm gonna, oh, this link doesn't work. Let me share my screen real quick. I'm gonna find a link to this and I'll share it with you. This is a link that I came across while I was looking up like lighting and things like that. This was, I think this link I saw it through the DOE website. I forget where exactly, but this is from UC Davis, California Lighting Tech Center. And this is based off of the 2019 California Building Energy Efficiency Standards, which I think deals with, this is kind of like a guide for like people who are like, you know, integrating these for buildings can kind of go by. So they kind of talk about in broad strokes, kind of like the updates to 2019 California energy codes. They go into a little bit about lighting, some of the stuff that was covered in heat spring, choosing the right light, and then the type of lighting sources, mandatory measures, and things like that. So yeah, this was kind of like a guide that could help us, I guess, in the future kind of further define this. But I guess I think we should probably make sure that just kind of get the stuff that we know on the slides, and then kind of like after that,
Circle
stuff
back
that we don't know, we can circle back.
for sure. Okay, sounds
But
good.
I'll try and get this to you because I'm pretty sure I saw this on like a DOE website. It was kind of either DOE or like California energy codes, because I think the codes that we're following, you know, that whole kind of California zero energy, I think
Mhm.
that's based off of the 2019 standards. Although, and that could be like a standard that, if we have time, we can cite that under kind of like the building codes and compliance that we're kind of abiding by.
Right.
But yeah, we can definitely circle back on that.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is like obviously we're just gonna have like we're gonna want to be using like LED fixtures, but like we need to do a more extensive like lighting analysis for like we can literally pick like fixtures in Climate Studio based on the amount of light that we need. And like if you put in a lighting fixture, like it'll give you the accurate lumens if we want to do it like that. But obviously that's something that like we don't have time for right now. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Like let's get what we can for sure. But cool. Because I did notice in those presentations, like it wasn't like everyone like said, oh, like this is our lighting, like there were, I think, a lot of things that might be included in like the design narrative, which is like the 60-page document that we're gonna have to submit. But I just think that yeah, maybe we just leave it out for now. And we can like worry about it later.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
My big worry about the HERS score and the UI is that we did include them in our project summary last time, and they were rough estimations, very rough. And we included like a lot of numbers that were rough. So if we like don't include a HERS score now, like, I don't know. You might be muted. Yeah.
Before we all kind of like leave, I want to talk with Hayden to make sure that, because I switch over to detailed inputs, I was able to translate this simplified into detailed.
Oh, that's
right?
awesome.
So, without any issues. So I'm happy for that. And I might try and go when engineering A meets kind of later on tonight, maybe kind of if they have time, ask them to see if we can get anything from that HERS score. But I'm sure they understand that like when we first submitted the project summary, those were like highly aspirational type things, you know. So yeah. I
Do you
guess
want to actually pop, since like it seems like Max is just hanging out there, do you want to pop into the architecture and see like what ask those questions that you were gonna like about the project summary, and then also what was the other thing? Oh, presentation, like if we should actually have like everyone present.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, I can ask him that. Yeah, so I will be back.
For sure.
And yeah,